Welcome everyone. My name is Elysa. I'm the founder of Forward Fooding, and I'm very glad to introduce you to our food innovation hub here in London. And most and foremost, thank you for taking the time for coming down to take part in our FoodTech Meetups. Do you guys know what a FoodTech Meetup is? Nope. Any guess?
Food technology meetup.
Technology, food. I know you came just for food. No? So, well, FoodTech Meetups, I guess, are our endeavor to connect techies with foodies and bring them into one place. Which leads me to telling you what's the hashtag of our FoodTech Meetups, which is actually very creatively techies meet foodies. So, if you want to be vocal on social media, well, that's I guess the hashtag that you can use. But I'm going to give you a quick introduction. We have a very packed agenda actually tonight. You're going to hear about some amazing companies that were actually cherry-picked right for you. I'm going to go later into a quick rundown of what you're going to be hearing about. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a quick introduction about this space where you're actually sitting. A little over 6 months ago, actually, in collaborations with actually Appletree, which is our partner and is the host of actually this evening. We're partnered up to actually build London's first food and food tech innovation hub. With one very simple idea, which was really gathering the whole community of entrepreneurs, corporates, and people who work in food, even at the government level in some cases, to come down here and find effectively a number of companies that were innovating in the space. So we focus primarily on two areas when it comes to innovation. One is fast-moving consumer goods, so anything that is packaged. Unfortunately, still packaged, but maybe one day we'll get rid of it. And anything that is food tech and ag tech related. But what we do at Forward Fooding is effectively along the lines of what I just described. On the one hand, we help startups at different stages of development, from very early stage to a little bit more mature ones, what we would refer to as scale-ups, to help them with two bits. One is tapping into alternative sales channels of the likes, for instance, of Google. We've been curating everything that goes into the canteens of Google, cafeterias and micro kitchens in the UK, and now also we started in Ireland for about 2 years now. And what we help startups to do is really to get their products into their canteens, as simple as that. On the other hand, we work with large corporates and really established food manufacturers to enable collaborations with innovative startups and primarily entrepreneurs really. With one very simple mission, which is raising the bar of what consumers get in terms of variety, in terms of quality of products. As we believe that effectively entrepreneurs and corporate executives bring a very complementary skill set to the table, which is on the one hand, entrepreneurs are really good at effectively bringing innovative products to the market, as they also usually approach this with a very customer-centric approach. And on the other hand, corporates are really good at scaling some of these concepts. So when you bring the best of both worlds, we believe that we can actually contribute to provide consumers with better quality and more variety as we get some of this innovation to scale through the corporate doors. These are some of our customers, partners, and supporters. As you can see, we blend them into one slide because we effectively work with them at different levels. As you can see on the top side of the slide is the techies, which really understand actually what we're trying to do. On the middle, you see all of our corporate customers, which are the ones that are committed to effectively innovate, and they're now trying to figure out how to actually do it also in collaborations with startups. And on the bottom, you actually see some of our international partners, which are organizations like ours in different parts of the world that effectively do something very similar to what we do. And they have helped us to build the global FoodTech map, which I will tell you in a little second. Well, actually, it's actually here. The global FoodTech map is nothing but a mapping tool that helps intended users to navigate the global food tech ecosystem when it comes to startups. So all the pins that you see out there represent actually companies in the food and agri-food tech sector that have developed interesting solutions. We've now mapped about 1,700 companies all over the world, also thanks to our partners, which actually share the data with us about their local ecosystems. It would be impossible endeavor, really, to do it without them. And we have created effectively 8 micro categories that help anyone to really wrap their head around what is happening in this space. These again are some of our international partners. We span from China to Australia, Sweden, Israel, Italy, Ireland, Spain, Portugal. So we've kind of covered everything, but not really. We still have a long way to go. Again, this is the space. On the other hand, actually, there are a few companies that you will also get to hear about in a little second. Just one actually of them. Or actually resident members within our hub. So they get to spend a lot of time with us, and we've built effectively a program for them to help them to scale faster. What are the objectives? Really simple: support entrepreneurs on the one end, create the perfect environment to connect large corporates with scale-ups, and last and most and foremost is to really build London's first food tech community. What's in the hub is office space, which is actually delivered by Coventry. And by the way, if you want to learn more about what they do, afterwards there are going to be Coventry people around. There's also an iPad there. You can just drop your email. They will let you know more about what they do as a co-working space, all the events that they actually run, and we can even give you a tour if you're interested in taking residency over here. Within the hub, what we built effectively is 3 bits. I mean, office space, thank God, was already built. So we're just helping different companies to get actually the right office space that they need. And it could span from a desk all the way to private offices. And that also helps them to grow within the space. On the other hand, we built a small media studio that actually helps resident companies to develop content for social media. Which is nothing but really a very simple, lights, kit with a camera that they can actually use to shoot, professional content. And then, hopefully, in the Q4, we will be launching also a retail platform within the space that will help effectively the members to get access to the products of some of the businesses we'll be working with. What we deliver in terms of content within the space are primarily 3 bits: tech bootcamps, or basically a condensed version of programs. There are 3 pillars of the program that we have actually built, which are D2C, which stands for direct to consumers, growth hacking and digital marketing. So we don't touch anything that is business related as such when it comes to business development or getting products into retailers or all of that. But we do specialize in digital, and we help the companies that are resident members of the space with their needs when it comes to understanding what they need to build on the back of their e-commerce platform to really unlock growth by controlling the sales channels. Events like this one, which are more social and really informal, to really spark connections between foodies and techies. And then we also deliver discovery missions and engagement programs with corporates, which are basically the ones that we use to effectively spark connections between entrepreneurs and corporate executives. In the studio, you might have noticed as we're walking in that there is actually this little guy. The laser doesn't work, but this little booth here is actually a podcast studio that can be rented by the hour, and is part of the greater property of White City Palace. And this is the retail platform I was telling you about, which we'll be launching in Q4 2019. Now, one of the things that we've actually recently launched are actually different number of memberships for companies that are not quite ready yet to basically take residency as resident companies, but they still want to basically get the most out of the community that we built by giving and taking from fellow entrepreneurs. So for very early stage companies, or even wannabe entrepreneurs that are looking to enter the space, we have the community membership. I'm a little bit ashamed of saying that we charge 250 quid a year to actually be part of it. But the whole point is we've noticed that there are a number of companies that would want to actually get to a point to be able to be based here, but they just don't have enough, effectively, connections and understanding of what they need to take, what they need to go through to basically get to that point. So this will be effectively the membership for them. The starter membership, which is 500 quid a year, gives members a number of benefits, which you can also find on our website, which is hub.forwardfooding.com, which basically helps them to get again to that point where they can actually take residency as scale-ups. And so the threshold there, I mean, there are a number of criteria that we look at when it comes to selecting the companies that get space, office space over here. And that is effectively their stage of development, how much they turn over, and whether there is a fit also with the other businesses that we have in here. Because the whole point is really to spark connection and collaborations also among other scale-ups. Coming events, really quickly, which are part of some of the progress that you've seen before. And the 16th of April, we're going to be doing a workshop on exporting food products. So again, it's for a little bit more mature companies we're looking to, or ready to export. And then on May the 21st, we're doing a PR bootcamp for food entrepreneurs. So we bring in a number of partners that we also vet to deliver these workshops to our resident company as well as external companies. And the whole point is basically built from the ground up. So we will never deliver effectively a workshop without a need from some of the companies within the business or the greater community that they've built. This is my email. If you want to know more, I'll be sticking around all night. So grab either myself or Max, who you're going to be hearing from in a second. But without further ado, you're going to hear about some amazing companies. I'm going to start from FareShare, who's next on stage. We got Maud to do that. Then we got to hear from Too Good To Go, which is, in my opinion, the perfect example of a food tech company, as effectively it's a tech business that has to do a lot with food. Then we're going to hear from Dan from Seachips, which I'll leave it there, and he will tell you what he does with fish and not a thing. I think it's a fishing business, but he will tell you everything about it. Then Toast, which is one of actually also our sponsor. You're gonna there is nobody from Toast speaking tonight, but you're gonna taste their beer, which tastes really good, and well, they fit the bill really well. Because effectively, they make beers out of surplus bread. Very interesting. Then we're gonna hear from Hannah from Chicp. She also turns actually surplus food and veg, here she is, into delicious hummus. Then we have Sophie from Elysa Catering, somewhere else, that she does actually catering services also using surplus food. Kitche, Alex, was going to actually unveil here for the very first time the project that he's working on. But again, I'm not going to spoil it. And then Factory is actually one of the companies that we have in our space. They see it across the hallway, and they do flavored water. And you're going to try also some of the products later. But without further ado, I'd like to invite Maud to tell you about FareShare.
Hi everyone, so I'm here to speak about FareShare. Has anyone heard about us? Good, that's good, a good few hands. So some of you might know we're FareShare is a UK-wide charity. We're fighting hunger but also fighting food waste by redistributing surplus food to vulnerable people through frontline charities and community groups. Christoph was supposed to be here as well, who's the head of our department, but unfortunately he got stuck up on a train up in North England, so I'm going to take over for today. So just to show you, this is one of our lovely colleagues. So this is the kind of trays that we get in the warehouse. So obviously surplus food comes in, and I'll explain that a bit more to you, just so that you have an idea of the kind of scale that we often deal with, for example, in the London depot. So food waste in the UK overall. So everyone is aware that food waste is occurring, but you don't really know maybe how much. RAP estimates that nearly 2 million tonnes is going to waste, while 270,000 tonnes could actually be redistributed to people in need. With FareShare, we managed to do about 3% of that, so 12,000 tonnes, so it's a lot of food still going to waste. One thing that we concentrate on a lot in work is the food recovery hierarchy. So it's the way that we kind of center the way we kind of work, and it's the kind of promise that our retailers and food manufacturers have with us as well. So it's important to know that the first thing that we do and that we want everyone else to do is to reduce basically the source of food. So first of all, what we really want is for there to be no waste whatsoever, and that's what we're striving towards, to basically get ourselves out of a job, because we shouldn't be here having to do this. And obviously the next thing is to feed hungry people, feed vulnerable people that need the food, then animals, then anaerobic digestion, and then obviously composting, but then landfill and incineration is the last thing that we want to happen with the food. And most of our retailer partners do believe in that very strongly and try to keep that as well. So the problem with food waste, a lot of people ask us, why does it happen? A lot of it actually comes from farms. So much isn't harvested just because some of the fruit and veg just isn't worth picking for them. It's too expensive. The retailers aren't going to buy it. So 30% of that goes to waste. So the gleaning network is great to get that food out to us, but that's where there's the majority of the waste. And then as you can see, there's some nice figures around here. I don't know, you don't want to read them all. But what I think is quite interesting is nearly 50% of purchased food actually goes in the bin. That is often because of labelling, poor understanding. People always say to me, best before use by. They don't realise the difference, and they don't realise how you can actually work with food that has gone past its best before. And that is, a lot of people often get quite, they're not even precious, they're just trying to be careful and then just throw out food that is perfectly edible. What we often claim is a big problem as well is those kind of 3 for 2s. If you buy one, we'll give you one free, all this kind of stuff. You're just taking it because it's available. You're not taking it because you're going to eat it, and that ends up in the bin. And that is a big problem that retailers are trying to tackle as well. So to explain a little bit how FareShare works, we get asked this all the time. We have different schemes. So this is the main part. So FareShare has been around for about 25 years. We actually got set up by Crisis during their Christmas appeal with Sainsbury's actually initially. We set up, it was called Crisis FareShare, and obviously then they realised there's a need to do it all the time, therefore let's open some depots. Now we've got 22 across the country and in Northern Ireland as well. So what we get within our depots is food from manufacturers, from distribution centres, from farms. Most of the time it's food that has never gotten to the store basically, and it's surplus because it'll never be sold for various reasons. There's wrong forecasting. A lot of the time the retailer just doesn't see the point in even bringing it in to try and sell. So we get really good quality food that would normally end up in the bin, but obviously we get it out to our charities. And we do that by our amazing volunteers. All our depots are completely run by volunteers. We have maybe 1 or 2 paid staff. And they actually bring in the food, and there's a whole big network of redistribution and labelling and everything. And then they bring it out in the vans to our actual charities. The figures are a little bit off. We work with about 10,000 charities now and community groups who then redistribute that food themselves, give it out in food parcels, but a lot of the time turn it into meals that then feed vulnerable people. But again, that's about half of those figures that what we actually do now. So you can see there's quite a large scale work going on. So we've done obviously quite a lot of surveys, we've done research over the years to try and figure out the impact. And 1 in 5 charities actually say if it wasn't for the food that they get from FareShare, they would actually close down. What we try to aim with charities is, obviously we want to redistribute food, obviously we want to tackle poverty, but what we're trying to do is reduce our costs. So by not spending that money on the food, they can then spend it on accommodation, they can spend it on employment, they can spend it on, putting on new projects with their service users. It's so many things that we're trying to do for them to basically, food shouldn't be something they should have to spend all their money on. And this is from one of our charities, that's what they've mentioned, is by doing that they can spend less money on being able to give hot meals. And often giving out a hot meal to someone, it gets them to come through the door. Someone might be struggling, they've just been let go, they've lost their home, and they don't know how to speak to someone. They need to go in, and by being told there'll be a hot meal, they can sit down, speak to people, not be isolated, then they'll get some help. And that's what we try to do a lot of the time as well. The food is often just a gateway. You'll be surprised the amount of charities that use food just to get people to come in and ask for help. And it really, really does work. So what I actually work on myself is FareShare Go. So we started back in 2016. So some of you might know of Food Cloud as well. So it's our tech partner, which is obviously why we're invited here. Where does tech come into it? I started on this project myself back 3 years ago in London. So it's been coming in, it started in Dublin initially. Food Cloud started with Tesco, and actually they decided we really need to do it in the UK. Obviously Tesco being so big over here. But obviously Food Cloud don't have the reach over here. They partnered with us to try and launch it out. So what happened is over the years we, what we call, launched all of Tesco. So that's about 2,600 stores that we work with. And now we work with Waitrose, that's about 300 stores. Asda, we're currently at 100 stores, but we're going to double that by the end of the year. And launching with M&S as well. So it's really exciting, but it's a lot of work. So what the stores do on the platform is they upload an estimate. So at the end of the day, they basically look, what kind of food do we have left? And they can upload that to the charities that we've gone out to see. So what my team do every day is go out to the community, go out, meet charities, and what we call sign them up, speak to them about the scheme, and we're really, really big on food safety. So we have to go and audit every single kitchen, every single facility that a charity uses, because we want to make sure the food goes to the right people and also is kept safe. So a charity that, for example, doesn't really have a kitchen and fridge and freezer isn't gonna pick up some raw chicken from a Tesco. They're gonna pick up some fruit and veg and some bread, because that way we make sure everyone is kept safe. Because we can't expect charities to always know what to do with the food. They don't have the resources and they don't always have the training to be able to keep the food safety. So that's where we come in to make sure that the food goes in the right way. So we put in what we call a charity onto a schedule. So they might have Monday from, for example, the Tesco Express around the corner donates every day. So they might pick up from there on a Monday morning. They receive a text, they say yes or no, whichever they want to do. And they go and pick up the food, and then they use it whatever way it seems fit. Most of the time, we do mostly work with supported housing as our number one service provider that we partner with. We do work with a lot of community cafes, and unfortunately the number one is breakfast clubs that what we work with, is because schools don't have any funding, and obviously kids don't come into school with no meals. All around London we see that all the time, and nearly every single primary school is signed up on this scheme, unfortunately, because they have no money or no funding to actually bring in food, to make breakfast, to get kids in the morning. Parents have to go to work, and this is the best way to feed children and to also keep them safe. So that is our number one person that we work with, unfortunately. So there's some stats that we have. So as I said, about 10,000 charities we work with now. We've also redistributed 14 million kilograms. I always look at the figures. And we're going to reach our 33rd million meal by next month, which is really big. So as you can see, throughout the years, I know you can see the graph, but the donations have kind of gone up. We have spikes due to seasonal changes and things like that as well. And what we try to always estimate is how much are charities saving. So through FareShare Go, we kind of estimate they save about £1,000 per year by picking up that free food as well. As you can see, those donations are quite bakery heavy, as there's always a lot of bread available. And then obviously fruit and veg, unfortunately, there's not as much chilled grocery and eggs available. Store level surplus is again quite small. I think people often expect it to be so big. They always, people are always telling me, oh, retailers are throwing out so much stuff. So a lot of the time, some of the stuff they have to throw out because actually it's not safe to give to anyone, and actually the rest of it they do donate. But they're getting stricter with their processes. There's not as much food available, unfortunately, to charities. But the idea is that we want to tackle that. We should actually praise retailers for not having anything at the end of the day, because that means they're doing what they should, they're selling what they should, and they're not overestimating and throwing out everything in the bin. I think the main problem, the fact that charities need to pick up that food, is a deeper problem than what the retailers are doing. So yeah, so just to give you a bit of background and everything, but I hope you learned something today.
Me for a second.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any question from Ode?
Nope. Yes.
Yeah,
We got some. question regarding the preparation stage, basically, when retailers are actually preparing the meals. So, is there any data available on FareShare about that? Like, how much avoidable waste is there when they're preparing the meal from like a particular cuisine or something like that?
So you mean so when the charity is preparing the meal, is it?
It's more like when M&S is
Yeah.
preparing hot food.
Oh, you mean
so
from
I'm
the
talking-
delis?
Yeah, and because I have seen there's this trend going on where chefs, they take pride in like creating stuff out of the excess food when they're
Yeah.
preparing a meal. So I was thinking if there's any data available on FareShare about avoidable waste from preparing stage.
So the thing is, with anything cooked, we can't redistribute anything like that. Anything that's been cooked by a deli, by a retailer, by a supermarket, or mostly restaurants, we don't redistribute that, unfortunately.